Well, good evening, everyone. You all must be very ready to get started because everyone's seated very promptly at 5:30, so thank you. So hello and welcome to this evening's Trailblazer Forum at the Hong Kong Jockey Club University of Chicago Academic Complex and the University of Chicago Francis and Rose Yuen campus. For those of you I haven't met before, my name is Elizabeth O'Neill. I'm the interim executive director of the campus here, and I'm also an associate dean with the Chicago Booth Global Degree Programs. So it is wonderful to see so many UChicago and Chicago Booth students and alumni in the audience this evening, so thank you for coming, as well as parents, special guests, and members of the general public. So before the program gets underway, I know some of you know this information very well, but for those of you less familiar with the university and what we do here in Hong Kong, I'd love to share just a few brief words about the campus and who we are as a university. So the University of Chicago was founded in 1890 and is a world-leading research university. Since our founding, the university has been dedicated to rigorous inquiry, questioning assumptions, testing ideas, and applying evidence to solve complex problems. And if you are an alum or a student in one of our classrooms, you will know that that is very much the environment that we foster throughout the university and all of our academic programs. Our commitment to that spirit of inquiry continues to produce insights that are shaping the world around us. And if you have a moment through this evening or after the main event, you're most welcome to take a look downstairs on the lower ground. You will see the 101 Nobel laureates affiliated with the university, their portraits on display, and we're very proud of that pedigree and that legacy. In addition to our home campus in Chicago, we have global centers in Paris, in Delhi, in Beijing, and a Chicago Booth campus in London. Hong Kong, of course, is home to the University of Chicago's flagship campus in Asia, and is a place where our faculty, our students, alumni, and partners advance ambitious research, world-class education, and deep collaborations across the region. So we're very, very proud to be the first and only American university to establish a standalone campus in Asia, and it is very much a pleasure and a privilege to be part of that community. So this gorgeous campus we have here, with the wonderful weather tonight that you can enjoy the views after the program, it's home to a host of academic programs, including UChicago Study Abroad at the undergraduate level, an expanding portfolio of summer academies for high school students. We have 5 programs concurrently running at the moment, and some of our high school students and their parents, we're delighted that you're joining us here this evening. It's also home to our Sokolov Executive MBA program in Asia, executive education, the Young Global Studies Summer Fellowship Program, and a number of social impact programs offered through Chicago Booth's Rostandi Center for Social Sector Innovation in collaboration with the Hong Kong Jockey Club. So those are just a few of the things that we do, but definitely if you'd like to have more information, many members of our team are here this evening. We'd be happy to share more details with you. You will also see that this campus represents a commitment to heritage and community. We've revitalized the Grade 3 heritage site here and welcome the public through guided tours. And certainly last but not least, we convene dozens of academic workshops, conferences, public lectures each year, featuring both cutting-edge faculty research as well as thought-provoking conversations with scholars and public intellectuals, providing a forum to discuss and debate the big ideas and emerging trends which are shaping the global landscape. This includes what we call our UChicago Nexus Asia series, which is focused on UChicago PhD alums across the region, and our signature Trailblazer Forum, which brings us together this evening. The Trailblazer Forum is a dedicated leadership platform that brings senior thinkers and innovators to our campus to share their journey, their perspectives, and ideas with our Hong Kong and our Asia community. So on to the main event. Moderating this evening's forum, I'm very pleased to introduce Anthony Casey, who is the Donald M. Ephraim Professor of Law and Economics and Faculty Director at the Center on Law and Finance at the University of Chicago Law School. Professor Casey is an expert on business law, finance and corporate bankruptcy, and his research and writing is focused on that intersection between finance and law. And that includes the role of intellectual property in the organization and financing of creative projects. And he also examines how technological innovation is changing the foundations of our legal system more generally. And he's teaching here on the High School Academy, so some of the students might be in the audience this evening. Before entering academia, Professor Casey was a partner at a major U.S. law firm, Kirkland & Ellis. He also served as a law clerk for Chief Judge in the United States Court of Appeals in the Seventh Circuit, and a proud alum of the University of Chicago Law School. In conversation with Professor Casey tonight, we are deeply honored to welcome our guest speaker, our guest of honor, the Honorable Kenneth Fok Ying Tung. And I was going to try to pronounce that properly and hope I got close. So, Mr. Kenneth Fok Ying Tung, BVS JP, is a deputy of the HKSAR to the National People's Congress, a member of the China Federation of Literary and Art Circles, a member of the Culture Commission under the Culture, Sports, and Tourism Bureau, and a member of the Legislative Council of the HKSAR, and that's the Sports, Performing Arts, Culture, and Publication Functional Constituency. Mr. Fok is currently the Vice President of the Fok Ying Tung Group, overseeing the group's investments in Hong Kong and mainland China. He has always been a staunch supporter of culture and sports development, currently serving as chairman of the Hong Kong Arts Development Council, Executive Vice President of the Hong Kong Federation of the China Federation of Literary and Art Circles, Vice President of Sports Federation and the Olympic Committee of Hong Kong, China, and board member of the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. In 2019, Mr. Fok organized the Guangzhou Hong Kong Macau Parent-Child Art Carnival in Nansha, Guangzhou, to promote the creation of a Greater Bay Area cultural and arts exchange platform. In 2021, Mr. Fok initiated an interdisciplinary project called the Arthletes, enhancing interaction between artists and athletes. Subsequently, he founded the Bridge Plus Living Art Space in 2023, which aims to integrate art into life and strives to create a harmonious and inclusive space. Under his leadership, the Hong Kong Arts Development Council organized the first Hong Kong Performing Arts Expo in 2024. Mr. Fok was appointed a Justice of the Peace in 2016 and awarded the Bronze Bohemia Star by the Hong Kong SAR government in 2025. So again, we are delighted and very honored that Mr. Fok is joining us this evening for the University of Chicago Trailblazer Forum. As I ask Professor Casey and the Honorable Mr. Fok to make their way to the stage, a final but important reminder will run this evening's session under Chatham House rules, where shared information remains confidential, unattributed to individuals, and we would ask that you refrain from any video or audio recording of the evening. And so thank you very much for respecting that request. So without further ado, you've heard enough from me. Really is my pleasure to welcome our guest of honor and our moderator to the stage.
Thank you for the introduction of both of us. I'm honored and super excited to be here. It's not often that I get to sit down in a conversation with someone who's achieved so much at your level across such a wide spectrum of fields, which is really the thing that is so noticeable in that introduction, including business, sports, art, public service. So there's a lot for us to talk about. I thought I'd jump right in and start with the public service side of it. As we heard, you hold several high-level political public service positions, both local and national, including one as a lawmaker, which I want to talk about later for especially some of the students who are taking the law class over these couple weeks. But I was thinking that the students and alums here could benefit just from hearing, like, what was your path to get there, right? What drew you to public service and so many roles, and how you ended up in where you are on the public service route?
First of all, thanks so much. It's really my honor to be here tonight. Actually, this connection was referred to me through Bernard Chen. So, thank you very much for the introduction just now, but with someone like Bernard, he's achieved much, much more. I don't know how much I am of a trailblazer, so actually it's my honor to be invited and have this conversation and also link up with students, alumni of University of Chicago. I live 10 minutes down the road. I've lived 10 minutes down the road all my life. So I go past this road every day. And it's really amazing to see the campus transform from an unused venue, a historical venue, to such a lovely campus. I go past the front door every day, but it's the first time I've been invited in. So thank you very much. Very nice view, amazing view. So again, it's my honor. Path to where I am, very interesting. As many of you may know, I actually studied abroad from a very young age. Studied in Hong Kong until primary 6, and I left for UK education shortly after. I didn't return until probably after when I'm 22, 23. And when I first returned, it was interesting time for those who are old enough. Actually, it was quite a challenging time back then. It was exactly during SARS pandemic, 2003. Of course, now, back then, I joined the family business. But at the end of the day, I know Hong Kong, but I didn't know Hong Kong. In a way, I've been away for so long. I think also at the same time, with having time on my hands, are there any organizations and different associations I could join that would allow me to reignite the connection with different groups in Hong Kong? I think that's really the start. So beside the business side and all the career ambitions, I started joining a lot of the youth groups in Hong Kong, youth service, United Youth Association and all this. So that's all where it began. But to cut a long story short, kind of one thing led to another. And I thought it was very interesting, not just for me to get to know another side and also a completely new set of friends and people, but I guess the path started from there. So after youth work, I was appointed or selected to join the youth organization in Mainland China. And then, through that capacity, had the, not experience, but had the chance to participate in some form of public policy suggestions. And one thing led to another. And then, from Mainland, as you might know, there are different positions for CPPCC. I joined there, and then from then on, one thing led to another. So now I represent sports culture in the Legislative Council, and also being a member of National NPC, so National People's Congress. But of course, on the other flip side, besides youth work, my family has always been passionate and involved with sports. So I guess from the early 2000s, in and out, I've been involved in different sports associations. Simon's here today. We work hand in hand in the Hong Kong Gymnastics Association. So I've joined the gymnastics since when? 2009, right? Or 2008? 2008, so nearly 20 years. So from 20 years, I joined, with the Olympic Committee. So on both of these kind of pathways, it led me to spend more and more time in the public policy and public side. And it's very interesting for me as well throughout this journey. It's really, when you look at issues and policies from a different perspective, then you can really bring yourself out, not just from purely the business side, but actually you consider more on issue, you consider more from a multi-faceted angle. And, this is also a learning curve for myself, whether in sports policy and LegCo now. So I'm sure we can discuss more specific cases moving forward.
So on that last note, like thinking of the multifaceted nature of it and the just sheer number of organizations it sounds like you've been involved in over time, how do you think as a kind of public servant of your role and who you represent, if it's the local interest, the national interest, you have your own personal business interests, how do you balance those, and does it make it easier and complement to have multiple roles, or does it get to the other conflicts that arise and make it difficult?
I think there's two sides to the questions you pose. Use the word balance, but I don't think so. For example, if you're talking specifically interest of Hong Kong SAR or China, based on my LegCo seating and my NPC seating, I don't see them in opposing forces. I don't think, in fact, I see them as complementary roles, trying to achieve the same objectives in two different ways. For example, I'll give you some concrete some examples. Actually, Hong Kong, of course, is part of China. So when we think about a particular policy or particular directive, of course, the core of it has to be beneficial for Hong Kong and the Hong Kong stakeholder. But at the same time, we should also think another layer. How would that serve the interests of the national importance? So I don't see them as a conflicting view. And especially now in LegCo, when we talk about, well, for example, the 15 years plan, we are making policy that uses Hong Kong as a one country system or uses Hong Kong special administrative region status to help advance the whole Chinese objective and policies. So they are kind of 1 + 1 larger than 2, rather than finding a balance between the two. So on the other side of the equation, when we're in Beijing, when I'm wearing my hat for the National People's Congress, so the lawmaker of China, and it's very clear that when we make suggestions, because every year we have to make some suggestions based on our understanding, but it's quite clear that when we write these suggestions to Beijing or to the specific departments in Beijing, we shouldn't write it to influence the policies of Hong Kong. So I'm not going to Beijing, so in going round the Hong Kong SAR government to say that Hong Kong should be doing A, B, C, and D. Rather, from the other side, is how do we change national policy to enable Hong Kong to do better? So this is both on both sides as well. So, for example, when we talk about, say, my constituents, so very, very specific things. If we want to promote art, so a lot of my artists would say, oh, we want to do more in the Greater Bay Area. But there are issues that with qualification, with customs and regulations, these issues are very real for my sector in Hong Kong. So I would use my ability as a National People's Congress member to write suggestions to the central government and say, hey, maybe for the Greater Bay Area integration, we could think about relaxing different regulations on such an issue that would help promote Hong Kong. But at the same time, that is also beneficial to the Greater Bay Area. You talk about integration or to the further the cultural development in China. So I don't think it's a balance. It's a balance in that sense. But if you're talking about, of course, the business interests and all that, to be frank, now I have less and less time available on the business side because the public work is now, with the time constraint, it's actually getting heavier and heavier on the shoulders.
So you mentioned both the kind of sports side of things and the art side, those constituencies you had, and from your record, it just seems that these are things you're really passionate about. And so just as a starting point, I was curious, like what do you find, what draws you to them and you find so compelling about those fields that you've made them kind of central to your career?
No, I think with my personal experience, my family's always been passionate about sports. I think sports is very easy to be passionate about, right? For us in Hong Kong, I always believe, and my family has always believed that sports is not just about, it's not just about being healthy. It's not just about the medals and the results. It really has a social effect. It really has a social effect to gel the community together. And, across history, a lot of, important connections, a lot of agendas have been driven through sports. So I think sports has a very magical and very, a very special position for a place like Hong Kong and even China. Of course, ping pong policy and all this, we all know the history. So I'm very passionate about sports in Hong Kong, and I believe Hong Kong can do very well in sports. In the past 10 years, we've seen that through our athletes, through our amazing results, we have actually really something that we can be very proud of. And also culture as well. For culture in Hong Kong, we have a very interesting cultural heritage. Of course, we have very deeply rooted Chinese culture, but at the same time, a society has been indispensable with Western culture as well. So with different, interpretations and different experiences, we can have a very unique touch and a very unique interpretation of this East meets West, which I'm sure you have experienced in the 3-4 times you've been here, as we were discussing. Hong Kong is a very easy place to live with. So I think these are topics that are very easy to be passionate about. And to more specifically, I think we're working as a LegCo member. I talk to my constituencies. They face their issues, they face their problems, and I think it's really, I feel passionate that, within my abilities, I am hopefully being able to move the needle a little bit. And we've seen this move, made, slow or fast, but we have changed it for the better. So we've seen it, directly with our results, and also with, just now as you mentioned, different initiatives that we have taken on that could, slowly push the whole agenda forward.
On the initiatives, the one that was mentioned in the introduction was the Athletes program, and I'm curious about this, the idea of making a connection between the two, between culture and art and sport, and what have you taken from that? Has there been interesting lessons or developments that you didn't expect or that kind of played out from making these connections?
Let me approach this question from a broader sense, because I don't know, I think a lot of our audience today are from the business side and from the broader community. So instead of talking about individual project and how the experience with that, I want to first set the agenda on how sports and culture has been changing slowly and recently in Hong Kong. You're from the States, as we were discussing in the room. In the United States and a lot of European, Western countries, sports and culture, they are very market-driven. They are very market-driven. They are private entrepreneurial sectors, and they are quite a substantial percentage of GDP component. Sports, for example, in the US, something up to 5% of GDP. So it's actually quite a big component of sports for the economic growth. And for Hong Kong and also in China, previously, it was less so. I don't want to talk about mainland China, maybe specifically Hong Kong. Hong Kong, the sports and cultural policy really started from the 60s and 70s. And from then on, sports has been really seen as a community service. So hence our name of our department. I don't know, maybe you don't know. So the policy bureau responsible for sports and culture is the Home Affairs Bureau in Hong Kong previously. And the executive arm is the Leisure and Cultural Services Department. So you can see from the name, it's the Leisure and Cultural Sports Department. So the mentality more so is about providing activities, sports, culture, to the general public in Hong Kong. So that's been that for many years, including before the handover and after handover. But recently, during this government, in 5 years, actually very recently, a new bureau has been set up. So the Cultural and Sports and Tourism Bureau. So you can see that there's a shift in the view of culture and sports, that it shouldn't be just a service provided to the general public. It could be served as I mentioned, other purposes, and maybe even economic growth for the future of Hong Kong. So now what we face is now there's a change in the bureau, there's a change in the view, how we take this into action. How do we make this actually something that is bigger than just community sports itself. So having this Cultural Sports Tourism Bureau, the first thing we have to think about is not having them as three different silos. Sports is sports, arts is art, and tourism is tourism. We should think of it as a collective whole. How do you invigorate sports and culture through tourism dollar, for example? This is one thing. Sports is big business. Tourism is one of the pillars of Hong Kong. But how do we use policy to enable people in these two sectors to interact and generate new, if I can use the word product, and new direction moving forward? I think this is where we are at the moment, is there's a change in the mindset and change in the policy directive to enable that to happen. So that's where we are at now. So we were sharing with you before, most sporting organizations at the moment is still government subvented. And the previous thinking, a lot of these events, they have to be organized by non-profit organizations, so-called NGO, to be able to qualify for government subvention. But recently, the government made the relaxation of the rules to say that actually, if you are for-profit sports promoter, sports company, if you want to organize sports events, actually, even though you're a for-profit company, you are also eligible to apply for the government funding as well. So you can see by little things like this, they are slowly moving towards a more kind of conducive environment for companies to come in. But having this, actually, we've been talking to a lot of companies. IMG, a lot of this big, sports promoter companies, they're also coming to Hong Kong. They are seeing the environment. They're seeing our determination. They're seeing our government policy, how flexible, how conducive, how attractive it is. We were just talking about the comparison between Singapore. And now we just had the new stadium being built, the Kai Tak Stadium. It gives the most fundamental layer. At least there's a top-tier venue for these events to happen. So the way I see it, I think it's a very exciting time. It's the beginning of the snowball. And from policy side, we are actually nudging towards the right direction. And how do we put together sports and culture? It's something that, we always say in LegCo, you have to do more. But I think slowly and surely, we are working towards that direction.
So it's interesting just to follow up on that, because it really raised some questions in my mind, thinking about it from the law side. You were talking about how you want them, allow market participants in, and that's nudging things in the right way. It's refreshing to hear someone in government saying we need to give more to the market. Usually people want to keep their thing, right? So the market wants, if you're in the market, you want it in the market. If you're in government, you want it in the government. And do you find like your view to be shared, or do you find it like, you hear this a lot, at least in the US, that like getting the government to agree to give something up and is very difficult. And again, yours sounds like an enlightened view, but I wonder is that true of the people around you in government, or do you struggle with that?
You're definitely right. To ask them to give up their jurisdiction or something that under their control is difficult. But I really believe, and this is really what I believe, is government's changing. And slowly but surely, they are changing bit by bit. And especially with these 5 years, it hasn't been easy, but they're doing it. I'll name a few examples. So, as I said, I don't want to get too technical, but for example, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department in Hong Kong, they control and they govern all basically 95% of sport and cultural venues in Hong Kong. All the sporting people, they all know, right? You have it, the stadiums, the football courts, the tennis courts, the badminton courts, the public beaches, and you have not, right? All this. And they're not incentivized to make money. Okay, they don't need to make money because they're a government department. So they may sound critical, but to them, they just want to make sure that everything is run properly. everyone's safe, it's clean, and all this, right? But actually, if you look at the public policy and public kind of coffers, right, this is just a cost center. Actually, this is a non-financial asset they could use to maximize, especially these few years when Hong Kong, the financial situation has been quite tight. I think as a lawmaker, we have to think about ways to unlock these potential money-making assets to contribute to our financial development. So I actually made a suggestion to CE, which like 2 years ago, and said, hey, actually you could, I'm not telling the department to give up all their venues and give it to the private sector, but maybe you can identify some to enable, just change the rules, enable more private activities to happen within these venues. And they did it. It's easy. From a business person's point of view, it's like lifting your arm. But maybe from a government bureaucracy point of view, it's breaking the rule. You kind of like tearing the sheet of paper. Once you tear it, then the whole thing can... But I'm not saying this in a bad way, and I admire their will. And CE, of course, I'm sure CE gave the direction. So for example, it's a very simple thing, right? We try to get more sponsorships for, say, you have an opera, right? But the opera is being viewed and performed in the cultural center. As a donor, we are very Francis Rose. As a donor, you would expect to have, space, events, venues to entertain your guests, right? It's just very simple things. If the cultural center can be used for private companies to rent, to entertain, to use, it will already help the sector to get more sponsorship. This is a very specific point. So what I'm trying to do is slowly take the red tape down. You can't move the mountain overnight, but I see that they're changing. So last year, of all things, the LCSD decided to put out 2 beaches and 3 campsites, if I don't forget, for private partnership. If you go to a beach, right, you can buy drinks, you can rent a sun umbrella, and you can rent a kind of a beach deck to sunbathe. But in Hong Kong's beaches, you can't sell drinks, you can't rent a beach ball, and you can't play beach volleyball, you can't kick a football because it's all against the rules. It's very simple. Of course, if a private company or whatever runs it, of course you need the safety and all that. But this is what exactly I'm saying is these public issues, you don't have to change ownership, it's still owned by the government, but allow more space and allow more private involvement. And then you can reinvigorate such spaces. So this is from a policy view. I think it's very important. We have to think about ways. It's not just, everything is about red tape. So this is something that I've seen it happening, and it should be moving towards that direction. So I'm encouraged, and this will in turn help our sector, the sports and cultural sector, to be more entrepreneurial, to be able to grow without simply just asking government for more money. Because I feel embarrassed every year representing our constituent, just knocking on the government's door and say, hey, we need more money. We need more money. So this is something that we've been thinking, and I think it's moving towards that direction.
So before we move off the topic of sports, I was just curious, because in these roles you've had most people think are pretty amazing experiences. So you've been part of the leading the delegation for Hong Kong's teams to the Olympics, to national competitions, which, when I was thinking about it, sounds really fun and interesting. And then I saw reading reports that you had to coordinate getting 45 air conditioners during a heat wave, which sounds less fun and interesting. But I'm curious then, doing that, taking a team to the Paris Olympics, what is their most interesting or memorable experiences from doing things like that?
Oh, yeah, it's not just all glory and view. Number one, of course, there's the pressure because all the media is like, how many medals are you get? I don't know, right? I hope I can get more, but of course there's a public pressure. I mean, just to be clear, because I'm very grateful for the government, because compared to many countries and places, Hong Kong, of course, we are SAR, we are Hong Kong SAR, and we have our own identity under the IOC, so we can send our own teams. And for a city of Hong Kong, you may say, a lot of people say that the government doesn't support sports, but actually, if you look at the dollar value, actually the government spends quite a bit of money in sports development. So this actually translates into our great medal count all throughout the years, whether it's the Olympic Games and also in the Asian Games. So I'm very glad for that. But of course, as the delegation head, you always have that hanging over your head, because the government spends so much on your team and you better deliver, right? I mean, that's the first thing. But secondly, I think I've had my fair share of kind of difficulties. As you say, aircon, actually it's very difficult to get aircon to Paris, because there's all sorts of regulations, electricity, safety, and all that. But I guess one thing is quite challenging as well, as when I went to Brazil for Olympics. Brazil, of course, posed its own challenge in terms of safety, in terms of logistics. But on top of that, we had the Zika virus, remember? So how to balance all this? We sometimes we try to give athletes more freedom, but that time we actually imposed quite a strict rule. So even after a competition, you're not allowed to go out by yourself, because we've actually on the ground had quite a lot of security scares. Even we heard about shootings and things like that. So as a delegation head, I think it's sometimes hard to balance these issues. But overall, Hong Kong team, Hong Kong athletes are great, and they are there for a very specific mission, is to do their best and get good results. So I've been happy for that.
And on the Paris Olympics, I gather it was interesting for you because it was a family affair, right? So you talked about medal count. Your wife is a 4-time gold medalist at the Olympics, I think, and known as the diving queen.
Yes.
Did that make it a special? And she, I guess, went as the chief diving judge to Paris.
Yes.
Was that make it a special event and unique to you?
No, of course. Well, I can't get a gold medal, so I merger and acquisition. I use the M&A route. No, but because she was a medalist in 2004 and 2008. So of course, that's her passion. That's her passion in life. So I'm very glad to see her continue down this path, although not an athlete, and she continued being, a judge, continued to contribute to the sports until today. So, Paris is special in a way. Paris is always a nice place to be. But she had her role, I had my role. So yeah, it's interesting. I think it's good. It's a good place to be.
Well, I have so many topics I would love to cover. We were talking earlier about just corporate governance and governance of nonprofits. But I do want to leave time for the audience. So I think I'll ask one last question that I think will be very interesting to our younger alums and students. Just like someone who's had your life experience in your career path that's balanced the private sector, the public sector, a family life. You mentioned you had 3 kids. Like, just if you were talking to the 22-year-old you or the 18-year-old you, what's the advice you would give? What made it possible? What did you do right? What might you do differently? If there's one thing you tell our younger students and alums of like what to keep in mind.
You make it sound like I'm at the end of my career.
No, you're at the
I have to reflect on myself, right? No, I think as I always say, try to jump out of the comfort zone. I think that's something that is very important, especially when you're young. You say fresh graduate, Try something new, try something different, try something that you're not willing to try. I think there's something, you have the time, you don't have too much on your shoulders, you have the, I would say, ability, you can afford failing. I think that's something that's also worth taking your risk as well, having a higher risk appetite, because the world is changing so much. I mean, I don't know where it's heading. I just saw a report issued by Anthropic. The jobs that are going to be replaced by AI, the possibility of it being replaced, and where is that now, right? I don't want to comment on specifics, but I just want to say that we all live in a very uncertain world. So I think just step out of your comfort zone, meet people you never met before, have conversations that you are not familiar with. You learn. I think you'll learn. I think even I see it in my kids, I mean, to be a certain extent, you have a wealth of information more readily available to you, but maybe the personal connection is getting looser and looser. Through your devices, you can have a world of knowledge. But I still believe that the interpersonal connection is irreplaceable. So, I wouldn't say that's advice, but maybe.
Sounds like good advice to me. So we have time for some questions. If it's low, I'll jump in, but I want to leave the audience. Okay, back there.
Thank you very much. Very interesting and insightful discussion today. Because I've been following Mr. Fok for a long time, because I've been here in Hong Kong for almost 15 years. And my question is about, we talked a lot about arts. We talked a lot about, how to make arts accessible to the general public, especially young people. Do you think that Hong Kong is still facing lots of barriers in terms of making arts accessible to young people? Because I work in education myself, I talk to lots of young people, and I know lots of young people, they haven't been to M+ Museum or Palace Museum. And I ask the reason why. They say, it's very expensive to go, we can't afford. But interestingly, we always boast about that we have world-class museums at West Kowloon, like Palace Museum, and we talked about lots of other museums as well. And we even have a new bureau, as you said, trying to promote. But do you think that we're doing really enough? Lots of work in terms of, helping those people to help them to at least to go to check out these galleries, and also maybe to do some work in terms of art appreciation. We have lots of arts, lots of interesting events, Art Basel, Art Central, all these things. But do you think that people really know how to appreciate the arts? Another thing is about the West Kowloon, which is facing financial challenges, because recently there was a report that 20 million Hong Kong dollars was paid in salaries to top executives. Do you think there is any justification? How are you dealing with the Hong Kong government in terms of this? What is your role in this? Because there was lots of public criticism towards this, why we have to pay, like, all the taxpayers to support the West Kowloon. Is it really, something that we need to do, or is it better for them to come up with all these like deficit issues and do something about this? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. 2 questions. I think I'll go the first one first. Maybe the second one I'll leave to Bernard. No, but I'll address that as well. First of all, we talked a lot about sports. We didn't really touch on art, and I agree with you 100% on the first thing. Hong Kong, from a strategic point of view, from government, so-called the Beijing government's directives to Hong Kong, we have to be a, if you use the English word, East meet West art cultural center, or whatever, how do you translate it, okay? So the general direction is there, is one of our objectives, along with the financial logistics and all this, what have you not. So the question becomes now is, what does that mean, right? So I always believe, like you do, that to have a very successful art, being an art hub, you need the general population to support art. Having their support means they have to understand it. And having understanding is not just about having a West Kowloon or having a Hong Kong MOA. It's about you knowing how to appreciate art. I think this goes back to our education system. Education system, of course, easier said than done. We always value scores, exam results. So I think it's time really to evaluate the importance of sports and culture in the whole in the whole education timetable and the ethos behind it. For example, Macau, if I'm not mistaken, they actually are very structured. So throughout 6 years of primary school, there's 1 year dedicated to, say, music. Second year is creative art. Third year is opera, or whatever it may be. So I think that has to start from the importance of the education system. And the stakeholder is not just the principal, the school. Actually, the stakeholders, the parents. Would your parents, would they voice out? This will take a long, long time to do. So I think this is number one. I think this we need to be doing more. But I think now, moving forward, I think, of course, you mentioned West Kowloon. That is kind of it's a cultural district. So they're financially independent. Let's put that aside first. I think in general, the museum scene is improving in Hong Kong. So you see the renovation of the MOA, and now it's actually doing more in the international scene. And that is actually free of charge for Hong Kong citizens. And of course, being from the legislator for culture, I believe there's much more room for improvement on current progress on different museums funded by public money to help that, help that roll. And I know that a few, 5-6 museums are being planned in the northern metropolis as well. So the pipeline is coming. That's number one. But number two, I think also back to the nurture of talents. I believe that we have actually a big deficit of art curators, art practitioners, and people involved in the art industry. And I think we have the niche. We have a very good advantage, but we don't have enough people. So even the museums, if they need to hire curators, we often have to hire from outside, especially the kind of the mid-management level. So how do we systematically attract more people to go into the art world, to go into the art business, is something that we have to think about. But this is a chicken and egg again. If you have a healthy art ecosystem, art business, then you attract more people. So this is kind of a two-way street. So besides that, I'm also chairing the Arts Development Council in Hong Kong. So Art Development Council in Hong Kong, we get about 200 million or so public funds every year, and we distribute it to so-called the medium and small art groups. So what we are doing now is try to really think about the whole ecosystem. How do we use this public money to support more people in terms of their training? So we are partnering up with different universities to provide courses, short course, medium courses for people interested in the art scene and circle to enable them to step into this industry. Because art is very funny. There's no for example, law, right? It's very clear. You do your internship, you go to a law firm, you do your 3-year placement or whatever. There's no specific path on how to get into the art industry. So we try to build that as well in our ecosystem. So that is what I would say. And I think if you talk about the broader issue, is how do you, this also kind of links into the West Kowloon situation. Yes, facing financial difficulties, I'm not going to deny that. It is facing financial difficulty now. So two things. First of all, if you look at different museums across the world, of course, not many museums make money. I think this is number one. So if you look at purely I'm using Bernard's standard line of answer. The recovery rate is about 40%. So it's not the highest, but it's not the lowest. So this is a fact. But I think what would be interesting is that, do we have policies in place to encourage private donors and private support of top museums like M+ and Palace Museum? In the US, it's very prevalent and it's very common. So a person's foundation or donor's foundation supports an art museum. Of course, in the US, it's slightly different because you have very clear tax incentives to do so. And Hong Kong being a very simple tax-based system, there's less of a tax incentive for private money, corporates to support, say, arts and sports. So maybe something we can look at is from the tax policy point. Can we somehow make it tax beneficial for companies to support arts and sports in Hong Kong? So this is something, I know the government is very reluctant to move the tax base, which I understand. But I hope this conversation can start, at least there's room for conversation to discuss. Because if you want the objectives of Hong Kong being the East-West art cultural hub, then we have to encourage more of the private sector to be involved in such an initiative. So this goes back to not just M+ and Palace. Maybe there could be more private sectors supporting, art appreciation programs, for example, right? Young people going to the opera. I think now it's not like they don't want to. They feel the distance. They feel scared going to the cultural center. It's on minds. It's like, I'll go to cultural center, I have to wear a suit, I have to wear a tie. I don't know how to appreciate classical music. I feel there's a distance. So these are opportunities that we could leverage on, different donors, supports, even government programs to let them understand more. I'll share one point. It's quite interesting. Hong Kong Sinfonietta, during the pandemic, they did something quite interesting. So they planned a concert in the cultural center, but because of COVID policy, the venue was shut down. But the musicians were there anyway. So what they did was they decided to record it. They record the whole concert, just so the time doesn't go to waste. So they recorded quite professionally. And what they did is, because during COVID, they partnered up with the cinemas. So I'm sure you never went to a classical music concert in a cinema. But what they found out was that actually quite a lot of people bought tickets to go into the cinema to watch or listen to this concert. So I'm like, why, any music enthusiasts, they would never think about doing on the music. But actually what the analysis was, actually they drew quite a young crowd and people who wouldn't normally buy a ticket to go into cultural center to appreciate such a concert. So these are things that we can do. Actually, there are a lot of things that you can do to attract a new audience. And you're right, it's back to education. And lastly, West Kowloon, I still hold a very positive view. I know there's a issue, but of course, I don't want to debate about whether it's high or low in terms of salary. But one fact remains is that talent is very hard to come by in Hong Kong. What we see is the same talent pool in Hong Kong in art practitioner going from institution to institution. And every time they jump, the salary increases. So this is actually what we're facing. And in the long term, I believe it's at the moment, I still believe it's more of an issue of a time issue. It's a cash flow issue right now. So government, you support or not, they relax the requirement for the land. So they own the land. So if you own the land, if you use it wisely, I'm sure cash flow would come in. It's just because of all sorts of reasons, the cash flow was delayed, and now we're in quite a financial situation. But I still hold a very positive view in the future.
Over here.
Hi, Kenneth. Thank you. I'm Naomi. I'm a Chicago Booth alumni. I'm also a member of CPPCC in Shenzhen. Yeah. My first question is, last year I wrote a proposal to the Shenzhen government, also to the Canton province government, because I know, we all know there are a lot of foreign companies in the very long history, like Jardine Medicine, which is located in Hong Kong or Shenzhen or GBA. So I strongly recommend the Chinese government should be doing some mechanism or system to helping those technology Chinese company or startups to work with those giant globally companies, and then to help them to going overseas more easily. How do you think about that topic, or how can you comment my proposal? That's my first question. And second one is, yeah, this is the Chinese strategy, national strategy, right? So I strongly recommend the government should make some mechanism or system to endorse those startups, Chinese technology company, work with giant Fortune 500 companies which are located in GBA, and to help them to do the POC or to do the application or to help them expand their business outside of mainland China. Yeah, that's my recommendation. You can think about that. And my second question is about sports education. As the Chinese family are getting more and more prosperous recently years, and a lot of Chinese family will cultivate their children from a very young age to do the sports, professional sports training. A lot of family like mine, I do the things now. So. But in the past, the sports in China were driven by the government, just as you mentioned just now. So, but we now have a lot of athletes like Eileen Gu or Qin Wenzhen. They're cultivated totally by the parents themselves. So, how do you think in those this trend will be more and more common in China? And in sports where the national team has a clear advantage, like swimming or diving, like your wife, can parents act as their children's agent in the future in China? Thank you.
Okay, two things. I think firstly, you talk about mainland companies. How do we go out, right? So I think, yes, definitely, the strategy now is for more companies, because, I think we are facing a very challenging time right now. So I'm not sitting here commenting about politics, but multipolar world and all this, right? The national strategy for China is definitely to embrace a more open society. So we are seeing policies from mainland China on both ways, encouraging, through simple visa policies, encouraging more people to come in, and actually opening more access for, deregulation for foreign companies to come into China to do business. And they're also doing very hard to increase kind of the environment, the friendliness environment, and lowering the threshold for companies to come in. So this is definitely one thing. But secondly, also at the same time, a lot of, especially tech companies, are also in demand of moving out, exploring new markets. So I think Hong Kong a few folds. I think simple as one thing in Hong Kong has to strengthen, and actually you're not reinventing the wheel, is how to use our financial markets to enable these companies to grow better. And you talk about the 8 centers. At the center of it is still the financial market, still the stock market, is still the financial hub of China. And this will only go from strength to strength. So how do we use our financial market to enable these companies to get financing to go out? I think this is the most simple one level. And secondly, I think Hong Kong can also be a great place for exchange. And moving forward, I think there will be more demand for international regional associations, maybe to be set up in Hong Kong, to leverage in this opportunity as well. We're talking about Hong Kong, I see a lot of foreign companies and foreign friends come to Hong Kong, they feel very comfortable. And Hong Kong could be a melting place for forums, for associations, for dialogues to happen, to enable this path to go out. So in terms of Hong Kong strategy, you see our CE has been very proactive to take not just Hong Kong companies. Previously, it's TDC who takes Hong Kong companies to go outside. But now we are more acting, besides Hong Kong companies, we're also bringing mainland companies together with our delegations to go out to different, especially Belt and Road countries. You know, the big guys, they probably don't need this, right? The Alibabas and all this, they have their own international strategy. But what we see is now they're actually medium-sized companies. By their own right, in their own region, Zhejiang or wherever, they are really big companies. But they still want Hong Kong to go with them to go out. And we have a very extensive network, Trade Development Council. We have, you know, the Hong Kong government has, you know, hundreds of offices all around the world. So these are all resources that we could use and leverage on to help the national agenda, so to speak. So I think our role in this will grow stronger and stronger, and this is something that we can also leverage on ourselves as well. And in terms of the parents being the agent, I don't know. Is that what you're thinking about going down this path?
Sorry, because my daughter, I cultivate her from 2.5.
You see, there's very
She
strong.
did the swimming. Yeah. Tiger mom. Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Eileen Gu's mom, I gather, is also very strong.
Yeah. So I hope we can do the agent thing in the future. But I know, you know, in Shenzhen or in a lot of like tier 1 cities in mainland China, the kids are always selected by the government first, and then they will enter into the the city team or the province team, and then if the wonderful one will go to the national team. So we will lost our control of our kids. So how do you think that in China, in the trend? I mean,
Well, of course, I can't give you parental advice on whether you represent your as an agent. But I think two things. First of all, I think it depends on what sports you're in as well. If you look at a lot of these winter sports, for example, and especially, for example, tennis, they are more individual sports. They're very individual sports. And it's very different to, say, diving, right? It's a complete different market environment. So it all depends on the sports you choose and how it's being operated. But what I would say is now China is also changing. So in the old days, I wouldn't say old days, but previously it was very centrally administered. So everything is controlled under the so-called sports bureau. So it's a centrally operated. And all athletes have to go through kind of the central training scheme. But now sports by sports, you call it unlink or togo. So they are trying to also move towards a more system like Hong Kong. So it's run by the association. Rather than everything controlled by the central bureau. So we're doing that step by step. But it's not easy. Because if you unlink from the central, that means you have to 支付盈亏. You have to find money yourself. So this is sometimes a tough process as well. It's not an easy process. But I think in general, I think the market for all the sports industry, it's going to grow at a very fast pace. If you're interested, I think the central government just released the 5-year plan for the sports industry a few days ago. So you can see it's actually changing quite a lot. So I think when you talk about is the athlete results, the top athletes. But why I say that there's actually a big market, you see a big shift from just purely focus on elite sports to more now sports for all. It's more because now China as a specific or a very, comfortable well-being level, actually people have more disposable income to spend on experiences. You see more people, especially young people nowadays, more concentrated or they care more about their own health. You see that sports is now becoming a trend. Things like pickleball, things like, hiking and things like that. So actually unleashes quite a lot of market potential for the sporting industry. I don't know whether any one of you have been involved, but High Rocks is very big now in Hong Kong. We would say 中年三寶嘛, high rocks, right? It's part one of it, like middle age syndrome. So people now, have to talk about high rocks and pickleball and something else. So actually, more money is going into it. So whether you're a professional athlete or even thinking about the sports industry, I think there's a lot of area that you could be involved in.
I think we have time for one more question if it's a quick one. So here from the center.
Hi, my name is Edward Tang, and thank you so much for offering this wonderful opportunity, and thank you so much for Councilman Fok here and Dr. Bernard here. So actually, I probably probably the only stranger here in this room, because actually I'm not from the U of Chicago, but actually I'm your fellow alumni. I'm from Oxford, so. I graduated from Oxford's New College with studying the contemporary Chinese studies, and what coincidence was my research concentration was on Hong Kong contemporary issues. My quick question is, it's certainly that you've been already super successful and a role model, like to our younger generation, and you mainly like working in the business group and also in the arts, but now you become a public figure that involved with public service. So I have two questions. One question is, what this has brought to you, like to change your life? I mean, the biggest change in your life. And the second is, what is the biggest challenge you found, like in this super big transition, like in your life and career? Would that be possible? You could share with me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a personal journey kind of question, right? So is it an exact change? I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say like I've been in private sector business one day and suddenly I wake up, I decide to leave that behind and join LegCo. It wasn't like this. It was more kind of like tipping toes into public service. And as the question I mentioned, I've always been involved in the family business. But luckily, I have also two brothers, so we could 分担一下，就是我们 have different roles. So I remain at the moment. I remain, at different boards to oversee it. But I see that the fairest thing in life is everyone only has 24 hours. There's something that you can juggle. So I think moving forward, especially the past 5 years as a LegCo member, joining these associations, you're a public figure, but it's not as public. But being a LegCo member, it's completely different. You are accountable to the general public. So there's a sense of kind of devotion. I think you have to devote more time because you were elected based on the promise of you would serve the community. So I think this kind of led to more and more time going into public service. And also, on the flip side, there's more and more expectation as well with the LegCo role on not simply just conveying the requests of your constituents. It's also to think about the bigger picture of advancing Hong Kong. So I don't want to go down too much, but I think this is something that it's been going down that path. And you say the biggest changes, difficulty, when you're in the private sector, or if you're in charge of your own career or business, I would say that you are kind of responsible of your own decisions, but your decisions, you can act upon it. So you decide to do something and you can make a change. And for right or wrong, you have to bear with that. But with the public role at the moment, for example, like a legislative council, we have a lot of suggestions. We have a lot of things that we think is good for, say, sports or culture. But getting through is the trick. It's not having the idea. It's how you convince policymakers, how you convince the naysayers, how you convince different people to make your idea come true. Now that's the toughest part, because you get frustrated. You think you have a great idea, and you keep banging on the door. You keep saying this 1,000 times. No one listens to you. Or the person in the relevant department just says no and shut you down. Then how do you do it? Do you feel, do you just forget about it? Or do you continue? Or do you go do your lobbying? This is very different from a private role. So I think for me as a second-term legislator, I would hope that I've been doing this better than the first time. Simon, 有冇啊？係咪好咗啲啊？好咗啲啊？ But I guess it's a lot of persistence, And when it does happen and it has a desired effect, actually it's more fulfilling in a way, because it's not just, it didn't come easy. Let's put it that way.
Well, thank you so much. We are out of time, but let's have a round of applause for our speaker.
No, I don't know whether I answered the question, but I hope, it's a great 1 hour just to share some of my thoughts. Not very insightful, and I hope to be back in the future. Maybe I have more to share towards the end of my career.